Hello, I'm Bert Oliver, and welcome to the Bowie News and Views. And this day, we're looking back on the month that was. And John, will you start us off with some out-of-the-country news?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was the month that was. We've celebrated Thanksgiving. It's now December, so we thought we'd look at November. It was such an exciting time here in Bowie.
Absolutely.
I received some photos from our ever-enlarging, ever-growing European viewership. This particular young lady happens to be in Malta, in the European island of Malta. Of course, she also happens to be my niece, Jillian St. Clair. She's on the right. Despite being a banker, you will see they're having homemade soup and a roll, which is, you know, they don't have expense account lunches anymore. But that was her friend. And there they are, she and her friend in Malta, which is quite a pretty place. There's a lot of historical, a lot of historical significance to it. And next, I think she's with a boyfriend there. You see how, I mean, that really looks European.
Yeah.
You know, they do a lot of walking because the expense accounts are cut down. And the final one, you will see, this is what has replaced, coming up is what has replaced HSBC Bank's limousines that the bankers get. Can I have that picture now, Jim? There we go. Now, at first I thought these were in Mumbai, but this is the transportation that the bank employees now whittle around in.
Oh. So if they make an outside call, they don't call the limousine.
They get that ugly thing. Isn't that atrocious looking?
That is something.
Anyway, well, that was that. We've seen our first Maltese visitor. She doesn't have a falcon, by the way. I'm sure you'll get that witticism, or attempted witticism. All right, Bert.
Well, the way with the bank, and of course, I guess they're lucky to have transportation. You said they walk a lot because the bank's in not good shape. So when they go out and have to make outside business calls, at least they have transportation.
Well, of course, you know, the banks aren't in good shape by our standards. You know, their directors are still getting multi-million-dollar bonuses, so I think they're just cutting down on things for show more than anything else. Actually, that's the biggest bank in Europe, as I understand it, and all over the world.
I've heard. What does AS stand for?
Hong Kong Shanghai Bank Corporation. It's basically British.
Well, that's interesting, John. And well, your niece has been with them a long time, I understand.
She's been with them for a few years since she got out of school. Yeah.
Well, how about us getting into some local?
Let's get into something. Let's get into something.
And I understand that if you and I have too, it seems to be the entire month, other than planning for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
It seemed was politics in Bowie.
Politics in Bowie.
But not politics as usual in Bowie.
Boring politics in Bowie. You must be referring to the city election that was.
Yes, the city election it was. Well, I owe you $1.
You do.
Because we made a bet.
15% of eligible voters.
And I wanted to agree with you. Oh, I forgot about that. I had to have it in my pocket, but I had to peel through all my ones. Yeah, I'm easy to get ones.
Excellent.
That's my bet paid off in public.
He paid in public. Okay.
And John, I don't know where you come up with that idea and expected no more than 15%, when it's usually at least 18%.
I know.
When they have full slates. Do you think that had a lot? What did happen that we didn't get that extra little?
Well, I think we've discussed this with others. There was a very emphatic lack of publicity. I don't think the candidates, with the exception of some, were all that dynamic in campaigning. There was one at-large candidate that I never saw at my door. I don't even think I received a piece of literature from him. And the candidate that ran against Mayor Fred Robinson, president of the Bowie Boys and Girls Club, I have no idea where he was. And I think people were just bored. And there was, as also has been pointed out, there were no referendum questions.
Right.
If there had been a referendum question affecting moolah, tax rates, or anything of that nature, we might have got 20%.
Right, and of course the previous election did boost the turnout because of the city
police referendum.
Was
question.
that, or was it the election before?
No, that was the election before, I think.
But anyway, that went through, and it brought a lot more voters out. So you're right.
Yeah.
And I think another thing I wonder if things were pretty comfortable about the local scene, city in good condition,
Yeah.
hopefully we could keep it that way.
Despite some of these crazy bloggers that are out there say the city is going down the tubes, which is a load of hooey.
Oh, that can happen, but the turnout thing we've talked to a lot of people about, and the referendums are some big issue on referendum, and there was no referendums at all. Now, once upon a time, I might point out, back in the days of guys like Walt Planet, our friend, he and I discussed the racetrack issue, and that's a long way back.
Yeah.
And they felt like they were not going to do certain things like enlarging the road or something to the racetrack. But the point is, it was the threat of putting it on referendum, and the city did do something that would be helpful to kind of guide them along a little longer. But the point is, the city then, I was in Walt's house, and I imagine the point I want to make on this is it was a subject before the election that was very important to all the citizens. And they asked every person that had the campaign and the running, they asked them about these issues.
Yeah.
Well, we had no issues this time.
We had no issues, and the campaigning was extremely dull. And by the way, you remember poor old Walt. One year he decided that he did not have to campaign. He was going to run on his record. Everybody knew his record, and he lost.
Right.
You know, that happens. And Terry Schutte made the point on this show a week ago that this isn't, for a better word, pizzazz. There isn't as much pizzazz, with the exception perhaps of Geraldine. But these council members aren't exactly dynamic at times.
Well,
I'm sure they work very hard, and they do a good job, but they're just kind of, I shouldn't say boring. That's not nice, is it?
Well, there's no one either particularly that outstanding among our numbers, and that's good. And the city council meeting, I do kind of like to, when I do have an opportunity to view them. Yeah. And that's when no football games on Monday night. And they do still meet on Monday, I think.
Yes, they do, Bert.
Consequently, every now and then you see someone that sort of is quoted often in the old days of what they may have stood for or protested, but we don't have the coverage either.
No, we do not have the coverage anymore.
About what's happening in that city.
No.
I'm sure there's some coverage, but I sure miss it. Yeah. Didn't see it. I mention that because that also makes a difference.
It makes a
in that
big
turnout.
Difference. You need someone covering a city council that knows a little background, is familiar with the issues, is familiar with the city. There's some of it in one of the papers, but in the other one it seems to be disappearing rapidly. And that, it's sad.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. It made a difference, I think, in the interest of the voters.
Yeah.
Let me tell you another thing, John, that we haven't talked much about. We're talking about the candidates could have maybe done some different, or a new challenger may have made a difference.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of attention right now that's not towards political things.
True.
We sort of, after the national election, we're with the city election, and then it'll be a couple of years away, I guess, before our next national election, of the national election. And we got a congressional election.
True, but we got, delegates. Congressional delegates, county council coming up next year, next November. And that isn't looking too exciting to me at this point. I understand that we had her on the show, Delegate Jerron Levy, for some bizarre reason thinks that she'd be a good candidate for county executive.
I've heard that from other sources too.
I find it pretty strange. I mean, her name identity in the county is not very high. Then we've got the sheriff, the man who loves dogs, running, and Glenn Ivey may or may not run. I don't know. And then there's good old Rushern Baker back again for the, what is it, third or fourth time?
I think his third attempt on that.
Well, maybe fourth time lucky.
Maybe.
Maybe.
I think. But, and he's working and has been working, so is the sheriff. And there's probably another candidate, Dean, that I understand is a possibility.
You mean the guy that was on the county council?
Yeah.
He is another likely candidate?
That's another word I've heard.
Oh, my.